Howdy, howdy. I'm George with Music Production Alliance. In this video, I want to show you the initial editing and processing that I do to the lead vocal for this track. I'm going to cover de-breathing, removing strong breaths, such as de-essing, removing strong S's, that sounds like that, P-pops or plosives, pop, pop, CHs, THs, and any other vocal articulations that may sound out of place. First, I want to show you what the de-breathing process looks like. In Studio One, I do this manually. Now, I've posted another video showing the process in a more detailed manner, but I wanted to address this as a whole within the context of the mix. Let's just take a quick listen.
A scary day for me. The beginning of my time away when my...
Okay, here is a breath, and you normally can just zoom in and pick it up visually. You could see that that's a breath there. Let's listen to it.
When my...
Now, that breath is already been reduced. Again, you can look at the other video and I'll place the link below. In Studio One, I remove strong breathing using a manual process. First, I highlight the section that I want to reduce. Then I use my macro, which reduces the gain by about 3 dBs. Number one, it cuts the clip. It reduces the gain. It fades it in or crossfades it. And then it deselects the clip. I have that macro assigned to Control, Option, and the tilde. You could see there, and this is what it sounds like now.
When my...
You can barely hear it again.
When...
This is what it sounded like at first.
When...
Okay, let's bring it back in.
When...
And basically, I'll do that through the entire track. I'll just slowly play it and monitor it. Let's do one more, and then I'll move on.
More than paying.
See, this one looks like one.
As we...
Nope. Let's see if I can find another one.
I could have had... I could have...
Okay, so here is one. So I'm just going to highlight the section. It looks like it's this right here. So I'm going to use my shortcut again, or my macro.
I could...
Sounds a little better.
I could...
And in fact, it sounds a little unnatural because it cuts it off. So maybe I need to grab a larger section. So I'm just going to take it from here and do this and use my macro again and reduce it.
I could...
Okay, much more natural. Okay, now let's talk about de-essing. The process is the same. Let's look for some strong S's in the verse.
A scary...
Right away, the first part has a strong S.
A scary...
The singer has a very nice voice, and he pronounces things very nice, has some natural harmonics that really bring out those S's and those plosives and those high mid and low mid frequencies. So you just have to be careful and pay attention to the singer, how he conveys the melody. So again, I'm just going to highlight that. And then my macro again. And let's see what that sounds like.
A scary...
So it sounds better. As a reference, this is what it sounded like before.
A scary...
Let's bring it back.
A scary... A scary...
Okay, and that's how I would go down the track to remove the strong S's. And this process is called de-essing. Okay, and if you've been paying attention, you probably noticed that there is a bit of ground hum or a hum sound or a buzzing that's created by an electrical connection to the wall. This can be caused by something as simple as a bad cable, an overloaded electrical outlet on the wall, or a bad voltage. There could be many different things. And sometimes when we're recording, we can either get in a rush or do things that can prevent us from focusing on these small details. Let's listen to the humming that this voice was accompanied with. And I'm going to exaggerate the volume so you can really hear it. And the fader is at 0 now, and I'm just going to push it all the way up.
A scary day for me.
And you could probably hear it, but I'm going to loop this section here, just of the ground hum so that you can hear what I'm talking about. I selected the event section that I want to loop. Then I'm going to hit Shift P to bring the loop into focus. And then I'm going to use the / to turn on the looping function. I'm going to use number 1 to bring the cursor to the front of the loop. Clearly, right away, you can hear that the humming is very loud, and it can also be heard when he's singing. Now let's turn off the loop, and let's let it play and see if you can pick up the humming within the voice.
A scary day for me.
It's very loud. If I don't remove this right now, when I start compressing, this is going to become a problem because it's going to become more noticeable. The compressor is actually going to raise the level of the humming. So what I've done, and if you notice here on my chain, I have a VMR plugin, a virtual mix rack plugin from Slate before the gate, and I'll go back to this shortly. Let's just focus on the gate for now. And again, let's just listen to the hum.
A scary day for me.
Okay, now I'm going to turn on the gate and I'll show you what I did.
A scary day for me.
All right, the gate was able to close down on the humming that was taking place in between singing phrases, but it was not able to get rid of it on the actual vocal because the gate starts to sound unnatural if I push it too hard. And I'm using the stock gate here from Studio One. And if you focus on this gain reduction meter, you'll be able to see how much noise it's actually removing.
A scary day for me.
And I have it clamping down immediately.
A scary day for me.
And that's probably too fast. So what we can do is we can reduce the closing time or the release.
A scary day for me. A scary day for me.
So that it allows the vocal to fully finish the phrase instead of cutting it off. I'm going to set it right at 527 milliseconds.
A scary day for me.
Okay, and the attack is very slow. Let's bring it up.
A scary day for me.
Okay, and that's very nice, very smooth. And you can see here where I have the opening threshold set to. This is where the gate actually starts looking at the vocal when it hits this level. Then I have the closing threshold when it starts to close the gate to remove the noise, and this is the range or the actual amount of gain reduction that we're telling the gate to do. This is excessive. Right now I'm telling it get rid of 22 dBs of noise and or clamp down on it. But let's see what happens if we reduce this, or sorry, if we increase this.
A scary day for me.
It takes longer for the gate to react when the vocal comes back on. So you don't want to reduce it that much. You want to reduce it just enough to get rid of the noise.
A scary day for me.
And that's plenty, but let's just give it a little bit more.
A scary day for me.
Okay, that's good. And then I'm telling it to just hold it open at least 50 milliseconds, and I can fix this or I can adjust it, and let's see what that does.
A scary day for me. A scary day for me. A scary day for me.
See, so it's taking longer because I'm using the 1 second hold time. So let's bring it to where we had it at maybe 13 milliseconds.
A scary day for me.
And then that makes the gate very smooth. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the EQ that I inserted after the gate, and I want you to focus on this section of the EQ, looking at the spectrum so we can try and pick up the rest of the noise. On this EQ, you can see that I did a high-pass filter up to 160 hertz, and I'm going to turn it off or disengage it, this band here. And now you're going to see the noise coming through around the 40 and 50 hertz section.
A scary day for me.
And you could see how it stays there as the gate is closing down on it.
A scary day for me.
All right, now let's engage the high pass filter or the low cut. And the Pro EQ, the high pass filter, is called the low cut. Now, if you don't know what a high pass filter is, you're always going to hear people say, use a high pass filter to get rid of the low end hum. Low end meaning in the frequency spectrum, you're looking from 0 to about 200 hertz maybe, known as the low end section. And the high pass, the low cut, is just basically saying, hey, I don't want to hear the noise that's coming through at about 40 or 50, or depending how far you push the low cut. Now, I have a 36 dB filter slope, and you can select a 6 dB if you want it smoother, 12 dB. In my case, I chose the 36 because I saw the noise coming all the way through here, and it did not affect my voice. Let's disengage it one more time, and we'll bring it in as the noise is playing.
A scary day for me.
Let's do that again.
A scary day for me.
Kind of like magic, right? It got rid of that low-end hum, and now we can begin to process our vocal in a more efficient way without having to worry about any of the artifacts that ground hum was going to create. Once again, disengaged.
A scary day for me.
Engaged.
A scary day for me.
Completely gone. So if we turn off those two plugins, the gate and the Pro EQ, you can hear what the vocal sounded like at first.
A scary day for me.
Engaged.
A scary day for me.
All right, very smooth, and it's not going to sound bad in the context of the mix. All right, now let's talk about what I have going on here as the first insert. The virtual channel console from Slate Digital emulates various consoles, Neves, SSLs, and stuff like that. I've never used a Neve, I've never used an SSL, so I'm just doing it by ear. Now, what this plugin does for me is, number one, it makes my mix a bit warmer, and it also adds some of the harmonics that the mix is missing. And what happens when you add those harmonics is that the mix, it's almost like it pushes forward and it becomes like alive. It no longer sounds dull. And I'll do some bypasses here so you can hear it. Now, these emulations are very subtle, and you have to be careful because sometimes you'll hear people say, well, if it's so subtle, why do we need it? Well, we do. It tends to build up, and the more you use across your mix, the more you're going to hear it. But you can also add some bad harmonics, so you really have to be careful. In this session, I wanted to use the Neve emulation or the Brit N because it just gives me some of that warmth that I'm looking for, some of that darker color. When we say warm, we're talking about darker. If you can think about daylight and nighttime, or brightness and darkness, okay? Pushing, maybe bringing up the low end spectrum a little bit more. The SSL tends to be too bright in some mixes. Now, I'm not using the drive knob. This is set at the default level, okay? And I do have it set up as part of group 1 because the changes that I make on this, when I first added the plugins, it's hard to go one by one to try and adjust each one. So I just set them I set one first at a specific level, and then I'll assign it to a group, and then I just copy that same plugin across all of the tracks. Now, all of the tracks will have the same group number 1. So when I move this here, or when I move any of the knobs within the VCC, it's going to turn all of the knobs in the entire mix. For the mix bus, I have a different plugin. In the case of the mix bus, I actually have the VCC mix bus. And I'll show you at my mix bus, which is right here. And you can see that I have actually, I have the mix bus 1, and I also have a compressor at the mix bus level. But let's see what the coloring that I'm talking about actually does to the mix. And I'm gonna play it with all of the plugins engaged now. And then I'm gonna turn them off. Now, once again, and another thing worth mentioning is that when you talk about depth, it's very difficult to visualize it. What do you mean by depth, right? Depth means things being pushed back a little bit, but in the case of the VCC, it creates a depth that can be combined with the warmth of the emulation, and it just creates this rich, pleasing harmonic or saturation. And again, it's very subtle, so just bear with me here. And what's important is that these plugins aren't adding a lot of gain, so you have to be careful so that you need to level match so that you can truly hear the difference. And if you look at my master fader, you'll be able to see that I'm not adding a lot of gain, and it's about the same when I turn them on and off. So I'm just gonna play the entire mix, and you're gonna hear what it sounds like with them on, and then I'm going to turn them off using the global bypass button. Then I'm going to turn them off using the activate all inserts toggle switch here, but I'm going to use a shortcut that I've assigned it to, which is actually Option Command A. All right, here we go.
A scary day for me.
On.
The beginning of my time away. When mommy's gone and the teacher plays, and we all came to be.
Okay, and hopefully you heard the difference that it makes in the mix. Now, when you use console emulation plugins, you need to make sure that you mix into them so that you always mix within the context of this emulation. Otherwise, you're kind of cheating yourself out of a potential color or a tone that you're looking for. All right, let's go now to the last plugin I have on the vocal chain. And this is a new plugin that I started using, and this is the Studio Rack from Waves, and I have the mono version instantiated because my lead vocal is in mono. The nice thing about the Studio Rack is that you can add multiple Waves plugins, and I think it lets you add all the way up to here, which is about 8. The other nice thing about it is that you have an input and an output knob or fader that allows you to control your level. This is very nice because when you start to add plugins, you quickly start to add gain. So let's talk about what I have going on here. The first plugin that I have is the Waves HEQ. This is a hybrid equalizer, and this is again an emulation equalizer, basically using some what they call US vintage and modern consoles, British consoles and American consoles. And these consoles provide different colors, different curves, and different cues. And in this EQ, you're almost always gonna see white cues. Like if you see here, you can see that my 700 hertz cue is very wide. And okay, and you control that. You can control the gain through here, and you can control the cue through here. And these are a bit more colorful, so you can actually hear the changes right away. Let's turn on the Studio Rack, and let me turn off the rest of the plugins here, and let me solo the lead vocal again. And let's see what this HEQ is actually doing.
Scary day for me. The beginning of my time away.
Okay, basically what I did here is I took out a little bit of the mid, and I say a little bit, but this is actually 8 dBs of reduction that I did at that specific band. But I'm gonna bring that up a little bit because that's really too much. I just wanted to exaggerate it a little bit. Now I've got it up to 3 dBs.
Scary day for me. The beginning of my time away.
And basically, I did that by ear, not using a spectrum analyzer, so that I can make a decision based on my room acoustics and based on any reference tracks that I'm using. I also gave it a little boost. Because I took out some of the mids here, I wanted to give it a boost right away, almost creating a smooth bell here. And you can see it, and I actually added about 8 dBs, and that's probably too much, and I'll just bring that down.
Scary day for me.
But it does add a lot of air to the vocal.
Scary day for me.
Right where I started to hear it.
Scary day for me.
And I could also bring this down just a touch, the mid frequency.
Scary day for me.
Bypassed.
Scary day. Scary day.
Okay, so now that gives me some room to keep working with the vocal. Next, I use the Kramer Pi, and again, this is another emulation. It adds color. I like a lot of color in my mixes. So let's see what this plugin does. And this is a compressor, and it has a basic threshold, an output, a release time, and a compression ratio. It doesn't have an attack. It's got a preset attack. So here we go.
Scary day for me.
On.
Scary day for me. Scary day for me.
All right, and you could see that it's giving me about 3 dBs, 3 to 5 dBs of gain reduction. And then I have the makeup at 5 dBs, but let's reduce that. Let's bring it down to maybe 4.2.
Scary day for me.
Off.
Scary day.
On.
Scary day for me.
And this just made the vocal a bit fatter, a bit richer, if you will. Let's look at the next plugin in the chain. And the reason why this is making the vocal sound like that is, again, because it has its own characteristics, whether it's through circuits, transformers, or whatever. I'm not such a technical person to know, but I'm technical enough to hear the difference, okay? And I hope you can hear it too. Now I have a CLA 3A, which is a nice plugin, and I'm only using this one for color. Let's hear it. On.
Scary day for me. Scary.
Off.
Scary day for me. Scary day for me.
And you can see that that one is actually adding gain. So let's reduce this by a few dBs. Let's try it again.
Scary day for me. Scary day. Scary day.
Much better. You can actually hear how this one is actually making the vocal a little brighter. And again, that's part of the color of the CLA 3A. And lastly, I wanted to add a 2A because this one really rounds off the voice, meaning it makes the transients a bit smoother instead of them sounding so peaky with too much attack and stuff. Okay, and let's hear what this does. On.
Scary day for me. Scary day. Scary day for me.
And I actually like when he says scary, the word, the C and the A, scary, because it almost sets up the transient so that it cuts through the mix. So that's very nice. And this, again, is rounding it off a little bit. And I'm getting a few dBs of gain reduction.
Scary day.
Looks like about 3. And the way I set up the gain reduction on the 2A is by using the peak reduction knob here. Okay, I don't like the noise too much. On some tracks it works good, and this track is not, because I have a lot of emulations. I don't want the noise to build up, so I have it turned off, and I have it set to compress, not to limit. Okay, let's turn it on.
Scary day for me.
Okay, lastly, let's turn off all of the plugins in the chain, and if you focus on this meter, let's just take a listen to it.
A scary day for me.
Notice that it peaked right about here at -7.
A scary day for me.
Let's turn on all the plugins and let's see where it peaks. And immediately you can see the gain reduction meter coming up.
A scary day for me. A scary day for me.
Let's turn them off.
A scary day for me. A scary day.
If you notice, the vocal actually sounds louder and the level is not really going up as high as the initial unprocessed level. Okay, so what that means is I can actually bring the output up just a few dBs, and I'm gonna do that here. Just bring it up a few dBs, and let's see, turned off again. Let's look at the meter here.
A scary day for
Engaged.
a scary day for me.
Now, what's happening here is that the average level or the RMS level, and this is actually what we perceive the loudness to be, is a bit more a bit more even, which means that it is going to sound louder. What we're seeing in the unprocessed vocal is that it's peaking at about -7, but the overall dynamic range is actually higher on the unprocessed vocal, meaning the difference between the RMS and the peak value. Okay, so now we have an increased RMS on the lead vocal, which is giving us that warmth, that fullness to the vocal. Let's do a last A-B, and this time I'm gonna do it in context of the mix.
A scary day for me.
Off,
A scary day for me.
on,
A scary day for me. The beginning of my time away.
Okay, now the vocal may not be perfect right now, meaning the top end may be too much, or I know that the mids, I feel really good about them. Maybe if you hear something there, you can let me know what you think I should do. But this is a video about how I begin my mixing process when it comes to the lead vocal. I first edit the vocal, again, the plosives, de-essing, deep breaths, and any other hum and noise that may be heard in the background. Then I add my color to it using a console emulation. In this case, I use the VCC. I then gate the vocal to get rid of as much noise as possible in a natural way. I also use a high pass filter or a low cut to remove a lot of that noise going on in the low end section of the spectrum that we don't really need to hear, and I push it to the right as much as I can without making the voice sound thin. Lastly, I use my coloring EQ to remove some of those bad frequencies using a wider Q and boosting up some of the top end, again using a wide Q. Then I used a couple of compressors stacked up on top of each other. One is doing gain reduction, about 3 dBs. The second one was doing no gain reduction, just using it for color. And the last compressor plugin was actually doing some more compression, but in a more natural, round way. Okay, I hope this video was helpful to you. If you liked the video, please share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.
Scary day.